All right, we are live. We are live. We are live. All right. Peace, power, and prosperity, everyone. I am here with the incomparable, the lovely, the astrological phenomenon known as Divine Feminine Works.
Hello. I always love your introductions. They're very, very flattering. I always appreciate that.
Good. I'm glad. It's my honor to have you as usual.
It's an honor to be here.
Yes, good. Thank you. We appreciate your time. You could be doing anything else on a Friday night, but you choose to speak to me. I appreciate
it. My pleasure.
Definitely. So let's see. I guess we could set it off real quick. I'm gonna go into speaker mode. And I wanted to talk to you because I know we're talking about Gemini season, which just started. We just came out of Taurus season. One thing, even though we did a little prep work, we didn't really prep, but I wanted to kind of pop this up on you before we get into the Gemini season. We just came out of the eclipse window. And it's been a very, very intense time for people. I've been doing readings. I did a reading for a young man, did some counseling with them, going through a pretty rough breakup, kind of looking on Facebook, seeing people, separating, relationships, marriages ending, people getting into fights and things like that with their landlords. So it's been this eclipse window has been a very, very emotional, very intense time for people. Would we see more of that going into Gemini season, or less of that, being that we came out of the eclipse window?
So it's like the intensity is going to lessen, right, until we hit the next eclipse window in November. But the effects of the eclipse, we're still going to be seeing those play out sort of slowly throughout Gemini season and throughout the summer, really. So that intense feeling that the eclipses brought, we're not necessarily going to feel that anymore, but the themes that the eclipses brought up, we're going to see play out over the next couple of months.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, I guess we should get into this Gemini season. What is Gemini? What does that look like in astrology? I know it is an air sign. I know it is dealing with Mercury, and we have the Mercury retrograde that started, I believe, May 10th that we're under. Everybody's scared to death of Mercury retrograde. Everybody, yes. Mercury ruling the communication, the transportation, technology, and everybody's worried about bad things happening. I think we've seen kind of with even, recently there's been like a UFO. A lot of people have been talking about that, but Congress actually held a hearing on UFOs. And I thought that was interesting, that they're communicating about these ideas during Mercury retrograde. And with Mercury, the Mercury retrograde being that this particular Gemini rules Mercury, how does that conflict, does it go together? How can we utilize that to our benefit? Or what should we be looking at also to our benefit, but also what should we be looking at socially as well?
Yeah. So Mercury retrograde, I hate the cult phenomenon that it's become, because we've been dealing with Mercury retrograde for millennia and we were just fine, right? But now all of a sudden, because everyone's aware, it's like everyone's up in arms, everyone's scared, and there's really nothing to be scared about. To be honest, I love Mercury retrograde, and I'm a Virgo sun, so I'm ruled by Mercury. So Geminis and Virgos kind of feel it the most because we're very analytical, we're very mercurial, right? But the good thing about Mercury retrograde, particularly this one, because at least for part of Mercury retrograde, it's actually retrograde in its home sign of Gemini. So it's like the energy is extra potent. And that goes both ways. So as great as that can be, it can also be extra frustrating because you can really experience a lot of breakdowns in communication and frustration with communication. But the best part about Mercury retrograde is that it allows you a do-over. And I think that a lot of people sort of gloss over that fact. A lot of people just give the blanket statement, oh, your ex is going to come back or your ex is going to slide in your DMs again. And it's like, for some people, that is true, but it actually gives you the opportunity to redo things, particularly things that have to do with paperwork, things that have to do with business, communications. I know for me personally, Gemini is my second house, and the second house rules money and material possessions. The amount of past clients that have come back around, people who were like, okay, I'm ready to work now. Or remember that conversation we had last year when I needed this done? Oh, I'm ready now. Or just old opportunities coming back. It could also be old thoughts coming back, friends coming back, finding things. Sometimes you have to redo contracts, or maybe you have to look over an insurance policy or something like that. But it gives you a chance to do things over. It gives you a chance to rebrand. So rebranding, depending on where this falls in your chart, great time for that, especially with Mercury retrograde in its home sign of Gemini. So when it comes to communication during this time, obviously it's a breakdown in communication, right? There's a high probability of misunderstanding, of miscommunication, of misspeaking.
I've seen that. I've seen that a lot.
Even so have I.
Outside of my home, like people arguing and fighting. So yeah.
Yeah, because people are feeling it's like they can't necessarily express themselves like effectively. And then understanding people becomes a bit of a challenge as well. So while that is frustrating, it gets you to be very intentional about listening and about speaking, right? Because if you know that things are wonky, if you know that communication is frustrated and has the possibility of breaking down, you're going to be very intentional with what you say. So this is a time where you really get to think about, this is really a think before you speak time, right? It's not just popping off at the mouth and saying whatever comes to your mind. It's being intentional about what you're saying. So I think that during this time, you can make a lot of strides in terms of revising old relationships, making amends with people, clarifying things. Like a perfect example, let's say you're in a contract with somebody and, you know, the contract's been in existence for a while and you guys have been operating under the contract, but things just, you know, maybe you don't like how they've been going, or maybe you want to expand or something like that. Mercury retrograde is the perfect time to sort of do that, to revise it. Now you'll hear a lot of people say like, don't sign any contracts or whatever. And that gets people scared because people are like, well, I don't want to sign this like $1 million deal. And it's like, no one's saying don't sign it. It's just being careful about it. Mercury retrograde.
Sign that deal because you would have sold. I always say when people say that, and I see that in like, you know, astrological forecasts and stuff like that, it's like before you knew what Mercury retrograde was, you were signing contracts. Like
Facts.
You bought your home, you bought your cars, like you were doing things with contracts. So all of a sudden, like, someone told you. Yeah, so that I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it's just about being more intentional, being more careful, being more detail oriented. I read the other day that, you know, a lot of the planets rule two different signs, right? Venus rules Taurus and Libra. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. So when a planet is direct, it typically exhibits the characteristics of the first ruling planet. So Venus direct is very Taurian, right? Mercury direct is very Gemini, right? But when the planet is retrograde, it exhibits more of the qualities of the second ruling planet. So with Mercury, the second ruling planet is Virgo, right? Or a sign, I should say. So when Mercury is retrograde, it's a time for you to be more analytical, more detail oriented, more routine, more methodical, so that you can revise things or just communicate better. Because ultimately the purpose of any retrograde planet, it takes you a couple of steps back so that you can recalibrate, you can revamp, you can recharge. Anything in life is all how you look at it, right? If you think that Mercury retrograde means that you have to hide under the covers and not do anything for 3 weeks, then that's exactly how it's going to play out for you. But if you use it to its fullest potential and redo the things that you need to redo or revamp things or rebrand or whatever, it can actually be a really positive time.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like when we talk about twins too, because I know Mercury also rules the lungs and the arms, right? So it's also, I spoke in my video when I was talking about the Scorpio, how Scorpio could be a phoenix as well. And that a bird, you know, doesn't have hands, you know, If even if you look at a bird eating food, like they're pecking, if the food
Yes.
moves, they got to rotate the whole body sometimes. There's no hands to grab anything.
Mm-hmm.
So our hands are essentially our wings, right? And our lungs are what brings breath into our bodies. Breath, the etymology of the word spirit means breath or to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So I think right now it's really a good time, like you said, with being analytical, and looking at what we have been looking at in the past, what we've been analyzing, right? What we've been thinking about. It also brings me to like both hemispheres, the twin hemispheres of the brain, the left and the right brain, with the left brain being logical, reasoning, and analytical, but also completing that with the visual, the holistic, and the imaginative, and seeing kind of like how we've been analyzing our imagination, or have we been letting our imagination run wild into fantasy and just imagining things happening, or thinking, believing that if we just have faith, or if we just put stuff on an altar, things will happen, or if we just, wear certain crystals, will magically become delicious. Shout out to Lucky Charms, right? All the, all these things will just happily manifest without any type
Uh-huh.
of analysis or reasoning or even critical thinking or working out a plan, right? Because analysis is ultimately a plan, it's ultimately strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So aligning those two things and then putting those wings, these hands, right? Because if you were a bird, you would be flapping like this. So putting these hands to work and getting that spirit to work with these hands in order to create things that will be beneficial to you. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think with people looking at also the aspect of people coming back into their lives, that's always a common theme. I myself had that. I'm sure many people have had that as well. But I think also that's a way for you to look at the lessons that you had from that relationship. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily to take that person back, but when that person's coming back, instead of being like, oh, this person's coming back, or, oh, I don't want to see him, or oh, calling, oh, girl, Brian called me and I ain't talked to him in a year, girl. And this nigga's crazy, right? Look at like what why you attracted Brian, or, or Jane or whatever. Why you attracted Brian? Why you attracted Jane? And what lesson did you learn from that relationship? Or did you skip the lesson in that relationship? You just hopping from relationship to relationship.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, talk to us a little bit about, because I know Gemini also, as it's ruled by Mercury, as it's an air sign, it rules communication. Can and relationships are, that's the big thing, right? Or no
Yeah.
communication, no relationship, right?
Relationship. Mm-hmm.
So can you talk to us a little bit about what that looks like, or Gemini season, as far as our relationships? I know there's time periods in the season where we could tap into that energy to strengthen our relationships and strengthen our attraction to other people, and strengthen our attraction to loved ones and things like that, or our new beloved, new booze, things like that. But also how we could communicate. I know that was probably a long-winded question, but just touch on those, that relationship aspect of communication, how Gemini season could help that or even hurt that.
So it's interesting because a lot of people don't necessarily inherent in Gemini is relationships, right? Because it's all about communication. But I don't think people really think of Mercury and Gemini as a relationship sort of sign, right? Everyone sort of, when you think of relationships, you think of Venus. So you think of Libra, right? Or to a certain extent, I wouldn't even say that much Taurus, but more so Libra. But Gemini is all about relationships, whereas Libra is about love in relationships and harmony and peace and equality. Gemini, Mercury specifically, is all about how we communicate with people. So, how we talk to people, how we interact with them, what we think about them, sort of the people that are, it's the first sign where we're going outside of ourselves, right? So, it's really about, communication. How do you talk to people? Are you, someone who listens, or are you someone who speaks? Like, what is your communication style, and how does that affect your relationships? Because I think a lot of times people don't necessarily think about that too much, right? Like, you have regular social norms and whatnot, but how you communicate with someone sort of determines the quality of your relationships, right? Just like that book, The Five Love Languages.
Mm.
Although it's not just communication, my love language may be different from yours. And if we're interacting with each other, we might come to an impasse, right? Because we don't understand each other. And it's interesting because when you think about it, Gemini is the twins, right? So it's all about homogeny. It's all about sameness. Even in fraternal twins, they're obviously from the same egg, I guess. But so it's all about communication, but it can be a little closed-minded. It can be a little narrow because we're gravitating toward what we know or what is familiar to us. You contrast that with a sign like Sagittarius, which is the sister sign of Gemini, and thereby, which is also ruled by Jupiter, where we interact with people that are different than us, right? So when we're talking about Gemini season, it's more so, and Gemini is the natural ruler of the third house, and that's your immediate vicinity. So it covers everything we're familiar with, everything that we know, everything that is the same with us. Gemini also sort of speaks to community, right? You're a community of like-minded people. You may be a community of, the same race, the same religion. Inherent in Gemini is this issue of sameness. And so Gemini season could really be a season where you don't necessarily step out on a limb too much. You may just be really communicating with people or drawn or attracted to people who, like I said, are very familiar to you or the same as you. So it can be a little limiting in a sense. But if you're cognizant of it, obviously you can sort of break that barrier and sort of venture out into, things that are not of the same. But typically that's how Gemini energy works. And it gets you to, but in the sameness, it gets you to strengthen your most important and your closest relationships, the people that are actually closest to you.
Friends, families, and loved ones.
Exactly.
Should be the focus, right?
Exactly.
And the negative aspect, based on I'm gathering what you're saying, is looking at like kind of staying in a bubble. Like people just listen to people. Like social media is one of those things where you could get caught up in just believing what you believe, so to speak, never challenging your own ideas, because the news feed is going to feed you more of what you think normally.
Exactly.
So if you think, for instance, men are bad or women are bad, the news feed is going to feed you more and more and more of that, right? If that's what those things you click on, those are the things you watch most, right? So you could kind of stay trapped in your own bubble, so to speak, and never expand past that bubble. So the challenge would be to expand out of that bubble this Gemini season and communicate with people that are different than you, communicate with people that may have a different outcome or outlook, on life that you normally don't have.
Yep, exactly. But that can be difficult if that's all that you're used to, right?
Right.
It requires a certain amount of courage, which, speaking of which, Mars, actually the planet of courage, is in its home sign of Aries. So I think that actually helps people this Gemini season actually do that. It gives you that initiating and motivating energy to start new relationships and talk to new people. So I don't think it's going to be too hard this particular Gemini season, but in other Gemini seasons, it could have been more difficult without the presence of Mars in its home sign.
Oh, that's interesting. I read something about May 29th, Mars and Jupiter combining. I know that Jupiter is the planet of abundance. I love Jupiter. I was born on a Thursday. Thursday is Jupiter's day. I was also born on a full moon, by the way. So so it's a very, very impactful time for me. Thursday's always been like a good lucky day for me anyway. So, but something about this time where we can unleash our inner warrior on May the 29th with this Mars and Jupiter. Talk to us a little bit about Mars and Jupiter and what that looks like on the 29th of May, and which is coming up pretty soon. Week and a half. Memorial Day weekend, right? So that's going to be a time where Mars is also a time when people are going to turn up and people are going to be expanding who they truly are within, right? Who they truly is, a gas giant. So they're going to be communicating their inner self and presenting that to the outside world. Talk to us about how that's going to look, negative and positive pole, and what we should be doing in order to extract the best out of that day.
Yeah, so that's a pretty powerful transit because, like I said, Mars is in its in its home sign of Aries. and Jupiter is also in Aries. So it's one of those transits where it's like fortune truly favors the bold. So one of the positive aspects of it is if you're bold and courageous enough to make that effort, like Jupiter is just going to expand it exponentially. So it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, you buy a lottery ticket and you win the jackpot kind of a thing. Or if you are looking to start a business and you just make that first initial step, Jupiter is just going to expand your reach exponentially. So it's definitely one of those transits that's about risk taking. And it all depends on where it falls in your chart. So let's say if it falls in your second house of money, this is if you invest something, let's say, the return on your investment may be quite large as time goes by, right? And actually not even as time goes by, because Aries is very quick, fast energy. So it's almost like if you put in that effort, you're going to see exponential results almost immediately. This isn't like a Saturn transit where it takes a long time and there's obstacles and delays. This is like almost immediate gratification.
Quick manifestations.
Exactly.
I like it.
And with Mars energy, it's all about our desires, right? Mars is also associated with the sacral chakra. It's, it's very sexual. So it's one of those transits where if you're not trying to get pregnant, if you're not trying to have kids, don't do it to yourself because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I always tell people, if you have Aries rising, right, and you have Mars, Jupiter, and Aries, this is one of those transits where you can get pregnant really quick, or you can gain a lot of weight really quick because Jupiter expands. And in your first house of self, this is body expansion. So be mindful of what you're eating, because it's also a very impulsive kind of energy as well. Because Mars is all about desire. It's all about being impulsive and instinctual. So you feel like doing something in the moment, and in doing it in the moment, Jupiter just expands it exponentially. And that takes me into the negative side of it. Like if you're being exceptionally reckless, if you are not thinking, if you're just really being impulsive to your detriment or to anyone else's, it can result in like exponential catastrophe. It's a very larger than life sort of transit. So depending on where it's going down in your chart, you may want to take a risk, albeit a calculated risk to a certain extent. It's good to be impulsive, but not too impulsive. But you want to be
Gemini, right? Being at a analytical time. Definitely.
Exactly. This is one of those like $1 million idea kind of transits, also particularly with the sun being in Gemini, and then this Mars conjunct Jupiter in Aries. Like it's one of those $1 million ideas. And if you act on it, it's not just about thinking about it, it's about acting on it. You're going to see the returns of that almost immediately in a very big way.
Okay, so yeah, the 29th, guys, look out for that. I'm going to put that on my calendar too.
And what's interesting is that same day, the moon is going to be in Gemini also. So the very next day is the new moon in Gemini. So it's the 30th, it's a bunch of like new energy. It's a bunch of taking action and planting new seeds. Like you're going to want to start something. You're going to feel amped anyway. Anytime Mars is in its home sign, it's like you have a permanent battery in your back. And with the new moon energy, this is where you're going to seriously want to plant those seeds, because it's like Jupiter is going to sprinkle like fertilizer on them and make whatever you're trying to manifest happen very quickly and in a big way. So it's a really good transit.
So that's good to know. I'm gonna drop my book on the 29th and the 30th. So thank you for that. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna do that. All right, so let's look at the next big transit I see is Saturn retrograde Aquarius, right? And basically looking at that Saturn, structure, order, law, discipline, and Aquarius, the collective, right? And but also dealing with the collective, also spiritual learning, right? The Hierophant tarot card, coming into spiritual knowledge, things like that. Talk to us about how that looks in the forecast as well, and what we should look for.
So the outer planets, and when I say outer, I mean Jupiter and up, right? So Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Those planets, most of the time, they are retrograde most of the year. Like Pluto is retrograde 6 months out of the year. We're actually in Pluto retrograde right now. And so Saturn retrograde, although it's not as outer as Pluto, right? Because a Pluto retrograde, we don't necessarily feel it because it's so far away. It's a generational planet, right? So it's not like Mercury retrograde where you see it directly affects you personally. Pluto, you barely kind of feel it. So Saturn is sort of in the middle. So Saturn retrograde, we see it on a collective level in terms of organization of large structures like government, corporations, and stuff like that. But we do feel it on a somewhat personal level because it's really like karma. And especially Saturn retrograde is karma coming back to either reward you or to punish you, if that's what you believe in, right? Some people just believe in cause and effect, but traditionally Saturn rules karma. So Saturn retrograde is all about karma coming back, but it's all about reviewing the structures in your life and the structures that you are a part of, those coming into review and things from the past, sort of coming up. So it's really about taking stock of the lessons, particularly the life lessons that you've learned over, maybe from the last retrograde season or over the last couple of years. So it's a time to reflect on how you structure yourself, how you organize yourself. Especially with it being an Aquarius, this is going to be about the structure of your mind, the structure of your thoughts, the structure of sort of the future. So even it's one of those things where Aquarius is very forward looking, but during when a planet is in Aquarius and it's retrograde, it's almost like a slingshot, right? You've got to pull it back in order to sort of propel yourself forward. And Saturn retrograde is going to allow you to do that in terms of your thoughts and the structure of your beliefs and what you think about. So a lot of intellectual, I think a lot of intellectual issues, a lot of intellectual ideals are going to be coming up for review, not just on a personal level, but in terms of, our society. Mercury retrograde, it's interesting because this Roe versus Wade debate that has resurfaced, a lot of that has to do with Mercury retrograde, but kind of a lot of it also has to do with Saturn retrograde as well. The shadow period for Saturn retrograde is like a month. So for the last month, it's been leading up to Saturn retrograde. And I think that played a part in why we're seeing this resurgence of Roe versus Wade. It's sort of our ideals as a collective, sort of reviewing those and seeing if they still work or if they don't.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Even when you said that, it kind of sparked like this thing with Young Thug and YSL, the hip hop record label, and how the gang indictments. Even with somebody, one of their members being shot, and just this type of lifestyle and the impact of it. Even the death of Kevin Samuels, right? Reviewing how our concepts and our ideas, and even with people clashing, how his ideals were being challenged and the things he was saying were being challenged, and also the gang life, people being involved in gangs or people being involved in thuggery and things like that on the man side, just reviewing these different aspects. And then with Kendrick Lamar, the big Gemini, right, in hip hop, he's a Gemini himself, coming out with the beautiful album with a lot of lessons, and he was dealing with a lot of different Gemini themes, you being your own savior, you walking down your own path, even with the whole, LGBTQ thing, and how, looking at it from a different perspective. So, that those, when you said that, it kind of brought those things to mind on how, we're being challenged to really analyze and critically think about our ideas, and a lot of people, even in the spiritual community, there's been a lot of people in the younger section of spirituality that's been getting locked up, people that have been kind of self-deifying themselves, so to speak, and I think it's interesting that we really look at, like you said, who we follow, the path that we're taking, especially with Aquarius, how we're being taught, what we're learning, and making sure that it really is making sense for us, right? Making sure that it's really helping us and our family, helping us to ascend, helping us to become better people, not just magical people, not just people who could do spells, not just people who know a lot of things, but it's really making us better people. We're really more joyous in our life. We're more happy in our life. We're seeing things that we want to manifest, really manifest, and making sure that the things that make sense to us are not just things that make sense for the outer person or people on the outside, but they really are touching our heart chakra or our Christ consciousness, and are allowing us to feel more childlike in our expressing, childlike in our living, and childlike, not childish, right? As they say in the Bible, but childlike, where we having that childlike joy about life and using our imagination to create the things that we really want to create in this life and making sure we pursue our passions with right concepts, right? Because we could, you could be passionate on a David Koresh type of tip, where
Yes.
you're passionate about a cult leader. And there's a lot of cult leaders out here, on the
Oh,
internet.
yeah.
There's a big proliferation, and people don't see them as cult leaders. But even the Nature Boy thing with him
Oh,
getting locked up,
yeah.
there's a lot of cult leaders that are going down recently. So it's
Hmm.
forcing people to challenge. Are you going to still have the church mindset where you're following preacher? The only difference is the preacher is on YouTube, or are you really following your own thoughts, your own thinking, and your own path? And what you focus on expands. Jupiter theme, right?
Yep.
So we really want to focus on expanding things that really make sense, right? And that we're really taking the time to think about, not just things that sound good, because Gemini's communication. So we could be tricked, verbally. Verbally is the best way to trick somebody. Nice
Hmm.
words, nice tone, expressions, certain tonality, using just like the preacher does, right? You can get tricked easily if you're just focusing on the feeling of something rather than taking the feeling back and really making sure this makes sense, watching not just the language, body language, the character, and the expressions.
Hmm.
Um, I want to talk about I want to talk about the next transit that I was looking at. Actually, somebody asked a question. Where is that question that Hollow asked? He asked about Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn alignment. I did not see that. Do you know anything about that?
Um, I know Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Neptune were conjunct in Pisces not long ago.
Right.
Saturn has been in Aquarius for quite some time. So I'm not quite sure what that question is getting at.
Yeah, I didn't really see that even when I did some research on it. So I thought
Mhm.
maybe it's something you would know about, but let's move on. Oh, I want to talk about two crystals that are good for night now for the throat chakra,
Hmm.
uh, to open up the expression. Blue agate,
Hmm.
also lapis lazuli, right? I
That's
myself
one of my
use lapis
favorites.
lazuli. Lapis lazuli is very powerful, especially if you're going to do a speech, go into a job interview,
Yeah.
if you're going to speak to do public speaking, like in front of a crowd. Blue agate as well. All those blue correspond to the color
Hmm.
blue, which is the throat chakra color in advance. As you see, I have the blue back and behind me representing that Gemini energy. So
Hmm.
you tap into these different colors and these different frequencies, right? We don't worship, well, at least from my perspective, it's not about worshiping, it's about riding the wave, right?
Yeah, it's about
Turning waves
alignment.
into particles. Alignment, exactly. Quantum
Hmm.
entanglement. It was what the scientists would say is alignment, right? Quantum entanglement, turning waves into particles. So riding these different frequencies. We're not worshiping the stars. We're not bound by Mercury retrograde is doing this. We're not bound by Jupiter. We're just surfing. We're surfing these waves, right? And we're trying
Yep.
to basically catch fish. We're fishermen, right? We're trying to catch the fish and what these waves provide and how we could best surf these waves and not only survive, but thrive and expand in our own lives.
Hmm.
Want to talk about, so we have another big transit I thought was exceptional. And where one of the things I titled this was about love. I want to get your thoughts on love, what you see that as, what would you define that as? This May 28th to June 17th, where Venus is in Taurus, Venus and Mars is in the sky. You've been talking about Mars and light. Talk to us about sex, sexuality, love, what we should look for again, and how we can benefit from it.
Yeah, so Venus and Taurus, Taurus is Venus's home sign. So Venus is super potent. The energy is very potent. So it's interesting because the same week, it's this week coming up, right? So we have on the 24th, Mars is moving into Aries, and on the 28th, Venus is moving into Taurus. So they're both in their home signs. And we all know we associate Mars and Venus with men and women, right? Like men are from Mars, women are from Venus, that whole
Mm-hmm.
trope, right? But with them both being in their home signs, it's like the energy, it's like super masculine energy and super feminine energy. So you may find that it's always a dichotomy, right? Like there's always the difference between men and women, but we may see that exaggerated right now with both of these signs in both of these planets in their home signs. In terms of sex and relationships, being that we're in Gemini season and it's all about how we relate to other people, I think that that whole dynamic and that whole issue is you're going to see that ramp up this Gemini season with, again, Mars in Aries and Venus in Taurus.
The gender war or peace, because the gender war
here's the
active.
thing, it's both, because Mars is all about war and Venus is all about peace. So it's really
dichotomy.
Yeah. And it's sort of like that Libra energy, the balance of the two. And I feel like as the season plays out, you're going to see where the scale tips on either side. So I think we're going to see a lot of back and forth, a lot of war on one side, peace on another, men versus women, gender roles. I mean, again, you see this with Roe versus Wade, that's like playing out right now. It's men speaking on women's issues, women saying that men shouldn't be speaking about women's issues, and, you know, this sort of gender dichotomy in society. But
even with the baby formula,
exactly.
where men are saying, you know, when there's a crisis and that, you know, women should just be breastfeeding, which I think is crazy. Like, I'm like, you haven't read a book on anatomy, you don't know that you don't have a baby mama, like you don't know that some women can't, you know, a lot of y'all got baby mothers, y'all don't know that women can't, all women don't produce breast milk. You know, like this is, but so go ahead.
And I feel just like on a side note, I feel like speaking about gender issues in politics is such a horrible thing, because on the one hand, we don't speak about men's issues. We're not forcing men to get vasectomies. We're not talking about erectile dysfunction, making laws about it, right? But women's bodies seem to be, you know, on the chopping block for, you know, politics. But I guess that's another story for another day. But my point was that just how that is playing out is sort of this Mars and Aries, Venus and Taurus energy. And we're going to be seeing a lot of that on the grand stage, right? But in our personal lives, I think it's just going to make us a lot more relationship minded. On the one hand, you're going to have this surge of sexual energy, right? And then on the other hand, you're going to have this surge of like love. So it's going to be this dichotomy between sex and love and how that plays out in our personal relationships. And while Mercury is retrograde, you may see that playing out in past relationships or with past people.
Do you think people will, because this energy, we're in Mercury retrograde and there's exes and old people, do you think that people will be more apt to get back with their exes and relearn lessons? Or do you think people will want to, since Mars is also that warrior energy, people will just want to move on to new people?
I think we're going to see both. I think that some people are going to be very, you know, Venus and Taurus is all about comfort, right? And so I feel like a lot of people are going to want to gravitate to what's comfortable, especially in Gemini season. Like I said before, it's all about sameness. And if you have an ex coming back, that kind of feels more comfortable than sort of finding someone new. Right. So you're going to have a lot of people. I think you're going to see a lot of people forcing a lot of relationships or trying to force a lot of relationships, wanting to be comfortable, wanting to have sex, wanting to just have that physical bond with people. So I think on one hand, you're going to see a lot of fuck shit. I think that also you're going to see a lot of people who are really craving love, right? And craving relationships.
Yeah, I think that's gonna intensify as well. I think it's gonna intensify, especially as it gets warmer. You know, we're coming out of quarantine right now. A lot of people, you know, are taking the mask. They outside. We outside.
Everyone's trying to make up for the past 2 years. So you're gonna see a lot of reckless behavior. Again, Mars is all about impulsivity and instinctiveness, not intuition, but instinct. So you're gonna have people just really operating from a very primal place. Or a very vulnerable place, because of Venus and Taurus, it's about love. Like I said, it's about comfort. So you're going to have people really operating from, I'm not going to say base level, that's not it, but people operating from sort of that usual paradigm when it comes to men and women, like traditional gender roles. I feel like you may have a lot of pushback between some of these more progressive gender ideas, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. I think that this season we're going to see a lot more pushback with that in terms of traditional men and women sort of speaking out against I mean, I've been seeing it a lot lately just on my Instagram feed about a whole bunch of
Yeah,
stuff.
people are definitely pushing back about wanting to, embrace traditional gender roles for sure. It's a big thing, even in my little nerd circle, talking about the Marvel universe, we were noticing like all the Marvel characters are turning female,
Yeah.
and it's like Thor's gonna be a woman. Black Panther's gonna be a woman,
Hmm.
even in Doctor Strange, it was merely focused on WandaVision, right? Like,
Yeah.
and how She-Hulk is debuting, and She-Hulk has like the most episodes out of any other series that they've dropped so far. I think it's gonna be like 10 episodes or something. So like just like all the characters are turning female. So it's just like, while we embrace the divine feminine, we understand that is the time, we can see the
Hmm.
signs and symbols, how, things are just getting out of balance. So yeah, there's a lot of that that's happening. That where people are just like, wanting to go back to traditional gender roles, but you can't really stop the time, you
You
could
cannot.
honor who you are, and the people. I tell my
Mhm.
daughters all the time, people are gonna sheep. People are gonna sheep. The mass of people are gonna sheep. It's up to you not to be a sheep. It's up to you to follow
Mhm.
your heart and follow, the principles I tell you, evolve upon them as you should as a young person. You should take it to the next level, right? Teach me something, as you not being a sheep, but also know that people are going to sheep, so it's up to you as an individual, again, going back to that critical thinking aspect, to think for yourself. Like, don't just follow whatever people have planned for you. Make sure that if you're a man, you remain in your masculine frame. If you don't understand what masculinity is, don't just follow somebody on YouTube. Like, don't just follow somebody on YouTube. Like, really take some time, read a book. Like you said, a great book is Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by
Mhm.
John Gray, and look at, really look at how we're different, because sometimes women expect men to act like women, and sometimes men expect, women to act like men. She's not going to be
Mhm.
into sports like that, homie. Like, that may not be her thing, Video games
And
may not be her thing,
right. And they
like,
that may be a theme that really plays out during Gemini season. Like
yeah,
especially with that communication, like wanting
I can
you
see
to
that hitting
relate
pop
to
culture.
me.
Even even the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp thing,
Yes.
that's
Oh
big right
gosh.
now. Yeah, that's a big like gender war.
Yes.
Maybe not so in the quote unquote melanated black community, but in the outside world, yeah, that's like bigger than the Ukraine story right now. Like, it's bigger
Yeah.
than monkeypox, right? So it's
Oh my
huge.
gosh.
It's
Yes.
huge. Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about this. Something I came across in the, doing some research. There's the Ibeji twins, right? Ibeji in the Yoruba culture. Those are
Mhm.
twins. And these twins, the colors are white and red, and one is usually decorated in white and blue. So when I think of colors, I always look at the chakra system, and the red always comes up to what is rooted in you, right? Your security, food, clothing, and shelter, your fears, things like that,
Mhm.
and your loves, right? Because that's what you're rooted in. And the blue being your communication, but also your third eye vision, what you're seeing, what you perceive, and what you speak based on what you're seeing and perceive. So really looking at, when it comes to this twin energy, the Abedjai twins, or even these this Gemini energy, is really about, and ironically, first day of Gemini, dealing with the Yoruba twins, right? They dropped the which I'm gonna watch after this. They dropped the today. They dropped a documentary called Bigger Than Africa, which is
I
about
saw.
the
I
Yoruba,
just saw.
right? So I thought, just to show you how these themes play out, even though, the first day of Gemini, which is today, this comes out, this themes of Yoruba, where this twin
Mhm.
energy, they have twin deities, these Abejai twins, right? So,
Mhm.
and those of you who are Yorubas, don't, I may be pronouncing it wrong, don't hang me, but just the theme of that twin energy at play, and how, we could take that and take those colors and really look at, the white and blue, white and red, but the white part being, what are we shining light on? Are we shining light
Mhm.
on our fears? Are we looking just at food, clothing, and shelter, and our basic needs and our basic necessities? Are we living
Mhm.
in survival mode, right? Or are we looking at our highest visions, our highest ideals, speaking things into existence, but not just speaking them, not just using wordplay, right? Not just using visions, but actually taking these things into action to where they're actually coming into play. Also, these Abedjai twins have a correspondence with monkeys, right? Which I thought was interesting because now in the news they have this monkeypox thing, right? So just these correlations that seem to be, coming up. And this is how, you're able to look at signs and symbols in alignment with nature, in alignment with the horoscopes, where they're not just, people be like, oh, I don't believe in this, I don't mess with astrology, it's fake. I don't believe in the science. And you could transcend that. All that is real, you know what I'm saying? But you live here on the planet Earth. You know what I'm saying? You are a physical vehicle. You are affected by planetary electromagnetic fields. You're affected by the sun's electromagnetic field. You're affected by the moon's electromagnetic field. When these planets and these constellations are going around, they do affect the physical body. So you could try to go against the wave, or you could ride the wave, right?
Very true.
What would be easier? It's easier to manifest things if you ride the wave. It's easier to surf if you're riding the wave. So I guess we could leave with that.
But it's interesting. It's interesting that you talked about the documentary coming out on Netflix, because I've had this conversation with other astrologers where I believe that they have astrologers working at Netflix, because a lot of the movies come out at very astrological beneficial times. So I think to a certain extent it's planned that way.
Yeah, that's how I feel about Marvel too. When Marvel drops certain things at certain times, it's because, the whole Scarlet Witch right in between eclipse season, where it's dealing with chaos and balance, Scarlet Witch being chaos, Doctor Strange being balance, right? Or order, so to speak, right? The whole dichotomy. Then we have the lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse, right? Literally between two weeks apart. So, just that other Gemini theme. So yeah, I think, and then even the Moon Knight, they dropped the Moon Knight trailer when there was a full moon in Cancer, back when they dropped the trailer. So yeah, I think I think they even, and going to Loki, just for my nerds out there, going to Loki, when they dropped Loki, they were talking about variants, and that's when they first started talking about the Omicron variant, right? That's when they first came out with the whole idea of variants during that time. So Marvel, they're on it. So whenever these movies drops, whenever these pop culture phenomena drop, like you said, you want to look at these signs and symbols. And once you study and research these things and you're able to relate, I want to highlight this book too. This book is called Astral Body. You can get this on Netflix. It's for kids, right? It's a very easy book. I learned a lot about astrology through this book.
Nice. So some of the squares right there.
Yeah. It's talking about fixed signs, cardinal signs, things like that, right? Things I didn't know. This is a mutable sign, so it explains why my Gemini lovers are so crazy, why I don't get along with them. Because they're mutable. Like I would never date a Gemini. No disrespect to y'all Geminis, but never, ever.
I feel like people either love Geminis or don't.
Never. We could be friends. We could be cool because they're fun people. They're very sociable. They're very Geminis to me are usually, every Gemini I've met, they're like life of the party. They're always talking to people. They're always they're air signs, so they're all over the place. They're always in the mix. They're very mixy, right? They're very they want to, have friends around and friends in the neighborhood. They're very social like that, and I'm like, man, I'm staying in my little corner just watching everybody, seeing who's gonna stab me. Before I even let you in. That's a Scorpio, so I'm watching everybody. Yeah, you be social, let me stay and look around, see what's going on first. But that's that. But
that's hilarious.
Yeah. So I guess we could close this off with you doing a reading for the collective, what we should look at. She does daily readings, Divine Feminine Works, on Instagram every single day. And every Thursday also, she does live readings on Instagram. Definitely want to tap in. She also has a YouTube channel under the same name. Check that out, right? We want to support the sister, support the queen, support the goddess, the master astrologer that she is. She's giving a lot of gems to us tonight.
All right. So the first card I have is called Shattered. So some people, it's like sometimes you have to break, your heart has to be broken in order to break open. And I feel like a lot of people are, I think this Mercury retrograde is really touching a lot of people in their heart chakras, especially if you have relationships that are coming back. A lot of old wounds are coming up. And I feel like it's really important to not just write it off as, okay, this is what I went through with this person and not learn the lesson from it, right? Because it's very easy to be like, oh, this person's coming back around and not really, like you said, evaluate the lesson that you learned from them. And I think that a lot of people have a valuable lesson to learn about their heart, about their wounds, especially with the lunar eclipse in Scorpio. I feel like a lot of people's hearts were washed clean. And so theyere broken open so that you could let those emotions flow, let those wounds, wash those wounds basically.
Talk
So I
about
feel
it.
like
Yeah.
I feel like that eclipse energy is obviously still around, but I feel like this Gemini season that's going to play out a lot more, and you're going to see it play out in your relationships, right? Because Gemini is, relationship sign. So I feel like that's definitely going to be a major theme. We also have the Empress, right? This is very much Venus and Taurus, but some of you are learning self-worth. So your heart being broken, especially it being broken open, is really about your self-worth and how you value yourself. A lot of people, and just because this is a woman doesn't necessarily mean it's feminine energy. We all carry feminine and masculine energy. But I feel like that self-worth, that feeling of royalty, that feeling of your inner divine feminine or divine masculine is what some of you may be learning this season. But you're going to learn it in a way that doesn't necessarily feel so good, right? It's going to be past lessons coming back up, maybe past wounds coming up, but this time you're able to address it. Like I said before, Mercury retrograde is all about redos, right? And so maybe even if you're not revisiting that same relationship, the lessons from that relationship can carry you into the next one. So for some of you, that lesson is all about self-worth, how you value yourself, or the values that you have with respect to your relationships in general. Perhaps your standards were too low. Perhaps your standards were too high. It's really about finding that sweet spot when it comes to what you value in yourself and in relationships. And in finding that, that's how you have better quality relationships, not only with others, but with yourself too. So I feel like a lot of us are going to be learning those kind of lessons in some way, shape, or form. Okay. And the last card we have is courtship. All right. So I see some people getting out there and being social. So maybe if this Gemini
New boo
season,
time, new boo
right?
alert. Ow.
So even if you're not dealing with a lot of heavy emotions, because I think everything that I described so far has been kind of heavy, right? I feel like some of you are just going to be getting out there. Again, we're coming off the pandemic. We outside. We're really trying to make up for lost time. So it's good to get out there. And I think that some of you need to, because some of you may have a lot of stagnant energy when it comes to your heart chakra, maybe even some of your sacral chakra as well. You want to be careful with that though. But at the same time, you want to take the lessons from past relationships into these new courtships and relationships that you're going to get into. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it.
I feel like some babies are gonna be made around this this May, June, July. I feel like there's gonna be a lot of new children, a lot of star seeds coming up in the cipher. Yeah.
They are. I have to say, I've been feeling that energy since about, I want to say maybe the last 4 months or so. And there is this new wave of children that they really want to be born right now. And it's time.
It's needed. Yeah, it's necessary.
It's needed.
Yeah.
So
it's needed. We need new blood, new energy.
Take that as you will, if you
Right. Yeah, I ain't having no more, but yeah. For y'all. You know what I'm saying? For y'all. Yeah. Not for me. I'm good. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's a good time. Yeah. So overall, the forecast looks good. Again, it's all how you ride the waves. It's all what you look at. Take advantage of these time periods. Of course, do your own research on the month of Gemini. Look at your chart, right? Yes. Go to what's the site?
You can go to astro.com or astro-seek.com.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Astro.
I like that one.
I love AstroSeek. Yeah, it's pretty well thought out. It'll map out everything, even the transits. Exactly. It maps it out for you with nice, clear descriptions. Look at your birth chart, seeing where Gemini is, Mercury is, where these things, well, not Gemini, well, Gemini, Mercury, seeing how these things are going to
Mm-hmm.
affect you in your chart. And, be aware of what's happening, be aware of the gender war. Don't get emotionally caught up in anything. Don't get caught
Mm.
up emotionally in anything that is not to your benefit. You want to save your emotions. This is a video game. You're a video game character, right? You live in a holographic fractal universe. This is an avatar. So you are the video game character that you're walking around in this body in. Make sure that you are using that energy bar towards you and what is going to make you the best, most high version of yourself. If you want to connect to the most high, be the most high. Be the
Mm.
most highest version of yourself. Can use your energy bar for that. Don't have your energy bar focusing on what's happening in Buffalo, focusing on what happened in Cali,
Facts.
focusing on what's happening. Roe v. Wade is different. That's a woman's issue. However you feel about that is however you feel about that. But you don't want to waste too much. If you're not going to go to Congress, and if you're not filling out any petitions, and if you're not doing X, Y, Z, you don't want to be too emotionally involved in that either, right? You
Mm-hmm.
want to be emotionally involved in things that are going to make you better, especially melanated people. We don't have institutions. I always say this: we don't have institutions. We don't have car companies. We're not building things. With the metaverse is coming. Where's the melanated metaverse, right? Where is the melanated social media channels, right? We're going from social media to social media to social media, and none of it is owned by us. So we need to start really focusing on innovating and teaching our children about innovating. We're in the age of Aquarius still. So while we're riding these waves and these frequencies, we need to focus on how we could make ourselves better, how we can make our family and our children better, how we can show them more love, show more care, because the children are dying, right? They're killing themselves. There's high rates of Black and brown kids committing suicide. And this is in the gender war and all these things, the kids are getting overlooked, right? And the focusing on what's happening in the news, the focusing on monkeypox, the focusing on the corona, the kids are suffering. The next
Mm.
generation is suffering. And if we continue to pass on trauma without healing, right, we're going to continue to repeat the same cycle. And it's predicted by 2050 that the Black median income will be zero, not 1 cent, zero, right?
Wow.
And the way it's looking on social media, I mean, I mean, I don't want that to happen, right? That's why me and Divine Feminine Works and people like me are coming out to try to give y'all the messages. But until we focus on the things that matter, right? The things that matter, then we're going to be caught up and be going through these cycles in eternity. And stop looking for a leader. Stop looking for a leader.
Mm.
Stop
Yes.
looking for a fucking leader.
Yeah.
Lead yourself. Learn to lead yourself. Take the fruit from the tree, but you do not have to sit under the tree every time. Take the fruit from the tree, take it back, use what you need, and keep it moving. Lead yourself. Stop looking for a Black leader. Stop looking for a president to lead you. Stop looking for a politician to lead you. Those days are over. We didn't have Martin, Malcolm, Elijah, Garvey, Noble Drew Ali. A list goes on and on and on. How many people have came and gone and the situation is the Black Panther Party, et cetera, et cetera? How many people have came and gone and the situation is still the same? We need people that are avengers. You got your power, you got your power, you got your power. And then with our own individual powers, we come together and form collectives. We need startups. This is what we need in this Gemini. This is what we need to be communicating about, people. This is how we need to be communicating in this Mercury season. Mercury also deals with commerce.
Yep.
So we need to be dealing with these type of things during this Mercury season. Yeah, if we hook up with a boo, that's great. You find a new boo, that's great. But what are you and this boo going to create for the future? What children are you and this new boo creating? If you meet a boo and you're a single mother, is the person you're bringing going to teach your kids? Especially single mothers. Is this person going to come in and teach your kids? Right? Or they just look good and they got money, so I'm going to just bring them in. You know what I'm saying? What type of impact are they going to have on your children? So we can't just look at the surface levels of things. We want to look at, again, the most high portions of this particular season. All right. Anything else, Divine Feminine Works?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right. With that said, thank you guys for your time. I appreciate your viewership. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Was gonna do readings tonight, with Suche Dula, but we're going to push it till tomorrow. She has some things going on that she informed me about. So we're going to push it till tomorrow night. So look out for those readings with me and Suche Dula. Also drop another video for y'all in the afternoon tomorrow. Won't tell you what it's about. Well, actually, I may or may not. So I'm not even going to promise that in communication season. I got to be wise with what I'm saying. So I may or may not. But tomorrow night, definitely we're going to do those readings for you. That's 100% sure. As long as, a missile doesn't hit the planet or something crazy like that. And with that said, peace, power, and prosperity. Signing off, me and Divine Feminine Works. Appreciate your time. Have a great evening. And if you're watching this, a great weekend sometime over the weekend.
And happy Gemini season.
Happy Gemini season. Peace.